Have you ever heard of what psychosis is? Well, look, I've been there a lot, and I'm going to tell you exactly my crazy, crazy story of being in psychosis. Although I've been in psychosis many times for many months of my life at different points of my life, I'm going to share with you specifically the time that happened after being in Hawaii. And I actually had a vision of this entity right here, believe it or not. So, what is psychosis? First, psychosis is basically you are experiencing through the lens of the senses tasting, touching, smelling, hearing, and seeing. You are experiencing something that is not necessarily there for everybody else. Um, this can also just be connecting thoughts and giving meaning to things that otherwise you wouldn't actually give that and associate that meaning with. So I remember like it was yesterday. I was so clearly speaking to the lizards and they were answering by there was two lizards. They would both go onto the dark side. So here I am sitting on the stairs. There's a shadow with the edge of the house is casting a shadow. That when I would ask them a question internally, whenever it was a yes to the question, they would go to the light side, and whenever it was a no to the question, they would go to the dark side. I even sometimes would hear glimpses and streams of words as well that wasn't in English, but it was still, to me at least, perceptible, and I was able to understand what was being said. Um, Alongside this, there was multiple times that I'm like 99% sure that this really happened, but it could have maybe just been all in my head. Where I was walking around, I spent about 2 weeks in silence. That's why the psychosis happened. I spent 2 weeks in silence. I shaved my head because I was begging to God, God, show me more, show me the universe, like open me up completely so I can experience everything. So I was living in Hawaii and I shaved my head. I've been fasting for long, long periods of time. I did about a 2 week fast where pretty much all I ate was mushrooms and some raw food and probably like 3 to 5 days at a time, no food, but a whole lot of mushrooms and smoking wax and weed. And man, I tell you, just something snapped after this person at this festival blew this hape into my nose. And I don't know to this day whether or not he put drugs in it, but I was told that later on he was actually killed. Crazy story. He was killed for drugging some of the women that were in the area. I don't know if he was like doing anything more than that, but he was supposedly like giving people drugs unconsensually. So it very well could have been that this person drugged me, mixing that with such an open state. Because at first I was just so blissed out and open, but then next thing you know, it ended up becoming extremely, extremely dark pretty quickly. So that actually lasted about 6 months where I was having these visions, and I didn't get to tell you the thing that I don't know whether or not this happened. So I still to this day don't know whether or not, and it felt so real. So part of me thinks it was real, and I just kind of like commanded the energy somehow with the birds. Or just God showed me this. I don't understand, but this is what happened. So I went and I was barefoot, fasting, tripping on mushrooms, big time, and I was vacillating between extremely, extremely blissful and ecstatically, like orgasmically blissful, and then extremely, extremely terrified, filled with fear and anxiety, and just completely disassociated and disturbed. So I was fluctuating between those. Anytime I was in the house, I was extremely disturbed. Anytime that I would leave, I would typically get pretty blissful. So I got into this extremely crazy blissful state, walking around with my shaved head, shaved eyebrows, and a flute. And I'm walking around barefoot over the rocks. All I've eaten was like a few pieces of fruit off the side of the road in the last couple of days, and I'd been eating mushrooms. So I remember like it was yesterday. Um, I got to the entrance of this eco village that was like nearby. I forget what it's called, like the Bumblebee Place or something in Pahoa, Hawaii. Is like called the Bee Sanctuary. And I get there, and at the entrance there's a triangle of about 7 birds, and these 7 birds walked with me as I'm playing the flute, all blissed out, stepping with this really like grace behind each step. And here I am walking with these birds, and then they were just leading the way, and I followed them. And they took me to a peak, or excuse me, they took me to a chicken or a rooster that its rooster feathers were looking more like the blue of a peacock, but there was only just a couple of those feathers in the red part. So I was so amazed when I got there. And then when we got to this wall, I'm still playing the flute. The birds at this point, if I remember correctly, were like following me. Actually, this whole time, excuse me, I said this wrong. I wasn't following the birds. I went into the place and the birds were following me. Yeah, that was where my memory is now restored. So we first walk to that bird, and then we see the peacock feather in that bird, which was like such a trippy thing. And I associating everything in my head, like, oh, this is like the universe trying to tell me something. And then from there, went into this other wall where it was Pele, which is a god of sorts, you could say, in the mystic tradition of the island of Hawaii. So Pele is like the volcano, the spirit of like the volcano, and I just had this like deep knowing that like all of this, when I was looking in her eyes, like she kind of popped out, and it was like this deep knowing that like all this shit that's happening to me is because I started to play with fire, and now I'm dealing with the consequences of doing so, and that it was all going to be okay. I'm going to come out on the other end of this, but this was like just the inevitable what I had to go through because of what I've opened up. And if you want to hear more in depth and other stories from this psychotic episode, then just comment below and let me know. But there's multiple other stories that are way more interesting and honestly, in my opinion, kind of crazier than what I just said. And I would love to share them, but just let me know if this was cool, and I'd be happy to put them out. All right, see ya.